A young man recoils as hot tea spills over his head, a clumsy maid apologizing profusely in the background. He is Albin Audrin, 15 years old, and in this moment, a horrifying realization dawns upon him. He is surrounded by nothing but impending ruin. He understands that this world is that of a fantasy novel, and he has been cast as the story's most despicable antagonist. A character defined by his arrogance, laziness, and lack of effort, despite being a genius. A reflection shows his current overweight state, a far cry from the villain he is supposed to become. Yet he knows this is the path he is on. A flash of that grim future appears in his mind. Himself, defeated and crawling through a filthy alley, vowing that he will not be destroyed. Back in the present, he knows his downfall in the story begins after he enters the academy and is defeated in a duel by the protagonist. He resolves then and there to change his lifestyle, but his thoughts are interrupted by a voice from his doorway. An older man in a butler's uniform enters, apologizing for the disturbance. He introduces himself as Seabass, Albin's servant. Albin is startled, recognizing the name. He recalls that this man, Seabass Christian, is a distant relative who is also known for being lazy. Seeing his master's disheveled state, Seabass immediately chides him, questioning if he can't even dress himself and lamenting Albin's profound laziness. But Albin counters, stating it would be faster to do it himself. He then turns to the butler with surprising sincerity, asking for his help. Seabass is visibly moved, not expecting such a plea from the boy who has long been so self-absorbed. He presses his advantage, declaring his intention to lose weight. Then, he makes a request that leaves Seabass utterly stunned. Knowing the butler has knowledge of swordsmanship, Albin asks to be taught. The butler is flustered, stammering as he asks if Master Albin hit his head. Albin frantically insists he is fine and that his mind is clear, desperately searching for a way to convince Seabass of his newfound resolve. He finds his argument, gesturing to his own large frame. With his current condition, he asks, how could he possibly ever find a wife? His young master's plea left Seabass momentarily speechless, his mind struggling to process the absurd request. He could only stammer in disbelief. Albin, still on the floor, insisted that Seabass must not hold back, but attack as if intending to kill. He argued that while someone of his status should have no shortage of marriage proposals, his current physical state made it impossible. He urged Seabass not to make him repeat himself and to simply begin. He then made a bold vow, declaring he would prove he could both complete a diet and master the art of the sword within 6 months. Seeing such fierce determination in the boy's eyes, Seabass finally relented, agreeing to the terms. He formally accepted the duty. Though it might not be much, he stated that Seabass Christian would aid his master with all of his ability. In the background, Albin celebrated the victory, ready to begin the troublesome task. 1 week later, the harsh reality of training had set in. Albin lay collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. Seabass stood over him, casually asking if he was ready to surrender. The young master could only lament his swollen legs, trembling arms, and aching hips, realizing they had to start with the very basics. The young master's desperate lunge was met with an effortless parry. Seabass sent him flying with a flick of his blade, remarking that it is better to train one's muscles in a balanced manner. Albin, crashing to the ground, could only curse his butler's overwhelming strength. Lying defeated once more, every breath felt as if his muscles would tear apart. He conceded that it was useless. His body simply wouldn't move as he willed it. For now, he had to give up. As the young master was sent tumbling through the air again, Seabass reflected on the situation. They were, he noted, starting from exceptionally poor baseline. However, there was still time, so it was best to proceed a little more slowly. He delivered his assessment directly. At this current pace, he informed Albin it was highly likely that losing the weight would take not 1 year, but closer to 3. The number echoed in Albin's mind, his eyes wide with shock. The daunting news, however, did not break his spirit. A determined grin spread across Albin's face. He acknowledged that while it would be a hassle, his condition was already much improved. Gripping his sword tightly, he asked Seabass to bear with him just a little longer. Pleased by the young man's resolve, Seabass brandishes a training sword. He declares that this is the spirit he was looking for and promises to accompany Albin as far as he wishes to go. 1 month later, the training is underway. As their swords clash, Seabass critiques Albin's form, noting that while his swordsmanship isn't bad, he is far too slow. Albin, straining, roars back that he is not finished yet. Another month passes. During a spar, Seabass sends him flying through the air with a powerful strike, chiding him for being careless. Albin cries out for his mentor to wait as he tumbles backward. 3 months into the regimen, their swords are locked. Albin, panting but with a grin, declares that this is enjoyable and that his warm-up is finally over. Seabass, unimpressed, sternly commands him to be serious. Having established a foundation in swordsmanship, Seabass leads him to the mouth of a cave. Albin is surprised to learn there is a dungeon in his own territory. Seabass explains that it is a low-risk location, containing only weak monsters, and that after 3 months of training, Albin has made significant progress. He continues, explaining that it is time to see if the skills honed in training are effective in an actual battle. Seabass wants to witness the results of his tutelage firsthand. Deeper inside the dungeon, a small, horned creature emerges from the shadows. Albin understands immediately that this is his final test. Seabass confirms his suspicion, identifying the creature as a low-level monster, a goblin. The butler then poses a direct question. Can he kill it? Seabass adds that while goblins typically travel in packs, this one appears to be alone. Albin's expression hardens, his focus locked entirely on the monster before him. His resolve set, he stands his ground as the goblin charges forward, brandishing a crude wooden club. As the confrontation begins, Seabass watches from a distance, reflecting on his initial assessment. He had believed Albin's newfound spirit would last a mere 3 days, convinced a lazy child could never maintain such consistency. However, he was proven wrong. Albin has absorbed every lesson with extraordinary speed. In that moment of reflection, Albin cuts down the goblin with a single, decisive strike. He moved with a focused intensity, his blade a blur. For a diligent genius, there were no limits. The exertion left him panting, leaning on his sword for support. Watching from a distance, Seabass felt a thrill he hadn't experienced in years. With a proud smile, he addressed the boy, his voice filled with conviction, affirming that he could say with absolute certainty that Albin was truly remarkable. He stood amidst the fallen, a swordsman seemingly blessed by the gods themselves. Seabass watched the carnage, acknowledging the boy's extraordinary, almost cruel, efficiency in the slaughter. He turned to face Albin directly, his expression serious. He declared that the boy had grown strong, so much so that there was nothing left for him to teach. The words struck Albin, leaving him momentarily stunned and speechless. His shock gave way to a surge of emotion, and he clenched his fist tightly, a triumphant, strained smile spreading across his face. 6 months after his training began, back within the walls of the estate, Albin received startling news. He shouted in disbelief, demanding to know if it was true that he had received a marriage proposal. Seabass calmly admonished him, reminding him to lower his voice. He immediately began to fantasize, attributing this development to his diet and celebrating the fact that he would finally have a wife. He pictured a sweet and kind girl, but a flicker of doubt crossed his mind, making him wonder if this was truly good news after all. Snapping out of his reverie, he turned to Seabass with a serious question, asking which family had extended the offer. Seabass held a hand to his mouth, his expression unreadable. The answer came, heavy with significance. The ducal family of Barrow. The name hung in the air, met by Albin's stunned silence. He reeled back, shouting in disbelief. The ducal family of Barrow? He questioned Seabass, stressing the immense gap in their social standing. He was merely a baron. Why would they possibly choose him? His voice echoed from the manor, startling the bats from the eaves. Seabass calmly put a hand to his head, recalling the details from the story. He confirmed that Albin was meant to marry someone, and that his wife was to be Leticia Barrow. He explained her circumstances. She was known as a problem child whose engagement had been annulled due to her wicked deeds, leaving her without a place to go. The name struck Albin with the force of a physical blow. The realization crushed him. He wondered what the point of his 6 months of grueling effort had been. In the end, he was still on the path to his own destruction. Seabass placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, acknowledging that the young lady from the Barrow family appeared to have a difficult personality. He simply encouraged Albin to do his best. The advice was lost on Albin, who was internally screaming that this situation was a genuine, malicious glitch in his fate. Overwhelmed, Albin Audrin gestures pleadingly towards Seabass. He asks if he can refuse, explaining that the mere thought of the situation is giving him a headache, and he'd rather back out immediately. Seabass listens with his eyes closed, his expression unreadable. Seabass calmly advises him not to be discouraged. Albin retorts that the situation has moved far beyond mere discouragement and is now simply troublesome. The butler coolly replies that if he wishes to make an enemy of the ducal Barrow family, he is free to do so. Still protesting, Albin insists that it isn't right. Seabass counters by asking if their safety wouldn't be guaranteed by forming a relationship with the powerful ducal Barrow family. The question triggers a painful memory for Albin, who shouts back that it's precisely such a relationship that will lead to his ruin. From across the room, Seabass questions what exactly Albin has been doing all this time. He then begins to relay what the rumors say about his intended. He recounts the sordid tales, that Leticia Barrow has embezzled family tax money, brought young men into her mansion, and is a notorious spendthrift who even seized her fiancé's assets. As Seabass concludes that she sounds utterly mad, Albin sits dejectedly, listening to the character assassination. Albin clenches his fist, his face contorted in anguish. He thinks of how he was willing to endure anything, even drastic weight loss, to change his fate. Now, it feels as though all his efforts were for nothing. His despair hardens into a look of grim determination. As he stands beside Seabass, a grand carriage arrives. Onlookers whisper amongst themselves, realizing they will finally meet her in person. Leticia Barrow emerges, escorted by an older man, prompting a bystander to wonder aloud what sort of strange person has appeared. Leticia stands by the carriage door, her expression serious and distant. Albin watches her, his view framed by an ethereal cascade of roses. He is immediately stunned. He realizes she looks completely different from what he had imagined. Or rather, she is simply beautiful. Flustered, he manages to greet her. Good afternoon. He could only stammer a reply as the young woman introduced herself as Leticia Barrow. She formally announced that she would be under the care of the Audrin family from now on and requested their support. Stepping forward, Seabass introduced himself as the butler. welcoming her. He presumed she was tired from her journey and offered to show her to her room, but paused to ask about her personal servant. Leticia simply stated that she did not have one. Her response surprised Albin. Without missing a beat, Leticia firmly instructed Seabass to lead the way at once. As she walked past the two of them, she glanced over her shoulder, confirming that she had come alone. Once she was out of earshot, Albin turned to Seabass for his opinion. He first commented on her beauty, but clarified that wasn't what he meant. Seabass apologized, then considered how to describe her, stating that if he had to use a single word, he would say strange. He tightened his glove as he delivered his assessment. Albin immediately agreed. He remarked that no matter how he looked at it, she was completely different from the rumors they had heard. Her conduct didn't seem to match that of a girl capable of wicked deeds. He continued, adding that he actually sensed a certain wisdom from her. Seabass concurred, concluding that there was clearly something about the situation they did not yet understand. Seabass noted that it was good he grasped the situation quickly. With resolve, Albin decided to investigate what had happened to Leticia, but gave a strict order. No one else was to know. He clarified his intentions to Seabass, explaining that while he would try to gather information from her, he had no desire to become entangled in the Barrow family's internal affairs. He confessed, however, that he was relieved. Seabass simply agreed. While some believed all sorts of fools would try to speak with Leticia Barrow, it was acknowledged that she herself was very well educated, a fact reflected in her composed and serious demeanor. Seabass even muses that she might be a suitable wife for Albin, a thought that brings a blush to the young man's face. Seabass would be happy if such a match came to pass. Despite this, his attempts at conversation during dinner are met with complete silence. He remarks that even adventurers would need a mimic, but Leticia simply ignores him, swallowing without a word. His frustration growing, he places his cutlery down with a clatter and calls out her name directly across the long dining table. She remains impassive. Later, he complains to Seabass that she still refuses to speak with him. Seabass bluntly tells him to be quiet, suggesting it's because his jokes are too dry. He reflects on the situation, acknowledging that Leticia has ignored him for 3 whole days. Wondering if she is truly that wary of him, he clenches his fist, resolving that he cannot simply back down. Taking a more direct approach, he finds her in a hallway and asks if she would like to go for a walk. She turns away from him without a word. Undeterred, he follows, vowing to prove he can be friendly. He calls out again, asking if she is part of the herbal group or the potion group, but she continues to walk away. His efforts culminate in total defeat. He slumps forward, his head hitting a table with a thud. He remains slumped over, lamenting that his plan didn't work. No matter how many times he tried to engage her, she never responded. He sighs, conceding that at the very least, it was a one-sided conversation. He stood before the closed doors, contemplating his next move. If he did nothing, he would never understand what she was going through. He concluded that there was no other option, only one path remained. Stepping forward, he raised his hand and knocked firmly on the door. "Leticia," he called out, "do you have a moment?" From within the room, Leticia's voice was dismissive. She told him to leave, remarking that staying inside so much couldn't be good for him. Hearing this, Albin's expression hardened as he realized he was being ignored yet again. He clenched his fist, resolving that if she insisted on this, then he would play along, like a proper villain. With a sudden, violent motion, he kicked the doors, shattering them and bursting into the room. The explosive entrance left Leticia utterly stunned, her eyes wide with disbelief as she could only gasp out a single word. "What?" Standing calmly amidst the splintered wood, Albin offered a simple apology. Leticia, trembling with anger, demanded to know how he could possibly do something so reckless. He dismissed her concern, assuring her not to worry as he would have the door repaired immediately. Her fury intensified. She crossed her arms and shouted, questioning how he dared to force his way into a woman's room without permission. She demanded that he show some shame for his actions. He responded with a confident smirk, readily admitting that he was, in fact, a scoundrel. He declared that to achieve his goals, he was more than willing to force his way into a woman's room. Puzzled, Leticia asked what his purpose was, and he simply confirmed that she had understood his intent. Leaning forward over a small table, he cut straight to the point. "Leticia," he said plainly, "let's go on a date." Her expression shifted from anger to pure, dumbfounded confusion. A bead of sweat trickled down her face as she processed his words, only able to manage a quiet, questioning. Out in the open air, Albin Audrin stretches dramatically, declaring how fresh it feels. He turns to Leticia Barrow, asking if she agrees. She remains silent, her expression unreadable, thinking to herself that she might feel the same if he were not present. He laughs it off, remarking that at least she isn't scared. Internally, however, he acknowledges her continued wariness. He muses that if their positions were reversed, he too would find it difficult to trust someone with the name Albin Audrin. Leticia, meanwhile, glares, thinking him to be utter trash. Changing the subject, he cheerfully suggests taking a mountain path, promising an even more beautiful view from there. Leticia seems taken aback by the sudden proposal. As he starts to lead the way, she quickly calls for him to wait. She explains that she is not accustomed to walking on such rugged mountain trails. Realizing his oversight, he stops and apologizes, admitting he should have informed her beforehand. He reaches out a hand as if to offer assistance. In a swift and unexpected motion, he lifts her completely off the ground and into his arms. Leticia lets out a startled cry. He smiles down at her, asking if this will prevent her from tripping. Despite the gesture, she immediately protests, telling him not to touch her and not to do anything strange, calling his actions a bother. He merely hums in acknowledgement. As he walks, he marvels at how easily he can carry her, crediting his rigorous training. An image of a proud sea bass flashes in his mind. Leticia, still in his arms, thinks that while he might not be doing anything overtly strange, he is certainly thinking strange thoughts. He continues on, then suddenly points ahead with excitement, exclaiming that their destination is now visible. He holds her steady as they arrive at the overlook. The vast, breathtaking landscape spreads out before them. Leticia's apprehension melts away, replaced by pure awe as she gasps at the sight. She looked at him, surprised by his earnestness. He explained that this was a place with a spectacular view of the entire Audran territory, and he had been eager to show it to her. He leaned in closer, adding that it was because this was the land they would protect together. His words, and their proximity, left her flustered and blushing. After he set her down, she walked beside him, contemplating. She told him that she had heard rumors that Albin Audran was an arrogant and rude villain, noting that he was quite different from what she'd been told. He seemed taken aback by her observation. He turned back with a sly grin, adding that the rumors also called him lazy. With a confident air, he corrected her, clarifying that he wasn't a petty villain. His grin widened, revealing sharp teeth as he proudly declared himself to be a great villain. Leticia watched him, a small, amused laugh escaping her. She smiled brightly, her expression gentle as she countered his claim, musing that a true villain would never refer to themselves as such. Her simple logic left him momentarily stunned and speechless. As he watched her by the tranquil pool, fed by a cascading waterfall, he was struck by a thought. Her smiling face was truly extraordinary. She called out his name, happily exclaiming how cool and refreshing the water felt as she waded into the shallows. From his seat on a nearby rock, he asked if this was a novel experience for a lady from the city. Now sitting beside her on the bank, he teased her, saying it must feel good to feel superior to a city girl. She quickly denied it, and he laughed, assuring her he was only joking. His playful demeanor shifted. He addressed her directly, proposing that since they knew so little about one another, they should properly introduce themselves. Leticia seemed hesitant, stating she wasn't particularly interested, but he affirmed that he was. She let out a small sigh. She begins, introducing herself as Leticia Barrow. Her favorite foods, she explains, are tea and scones, and her hobby is playing with children. Albin remarks that it's a fine hobby, adding that he doesn't dislike children himself, before noting that it is now his turn. He introduces himself as Albin Audran, stating his favorite food is steak, though he's currently on a diet. His hobbies, he continues, are sword training and simply relaxing. Leticia muses that it's difficult to tell if he's a hard worker or just lazy, a sentiment with which Albin readily agrees. He continues, expressing a preference for the Leticia he sees now, acknowledging the hard work it must have taken. Their conversation is abruptly cut short by a guttural roar from the nearby woods. A massive, hulking beast emerges, and Albin recognizes it instantly. A monster, a killer bear. Leticia, panicked, questions his calm demeanor and insists they must flee immediately. Albin calmly notes that these forest bears are known troublemakers that ruin farmland. As the beast lets out another roar, his expression hardens. He understands now, it's targeting Leticia. He moves swiftly, positioning himself between Leticia and the monster with his sword drawn. He warns the beast not to approach her. A blast of dark energy shoots from his hand, striking the bear squarely in the head. The creature collapses to the ground, dispatched in a single blow. Albin turns back toward Leticia, a look of annoyance on his face as he laments their interrupted conversation. He then asks if she is unharmed. She assures him she is all right, just startled from her first encounter with a monster. As she clutches her hands to her chest, Albin watches her, thinking it's only natural for her to be frightened. But then, a sudden thought strikes him, and he questions his own actions. He closes the distance between them in a single step. Reaching out, he gently lifts her chin, his touch making her look up at him in surprise as she breathes his name. Looking into her eyes with a soft smile, he tells her he is relieved she wasn't injured. A faint blush colors Leticia's cheeks as she averts her gaze. Her expression shifts to one of confusion, her face half-cast in shadow. She quietly utters a single, questioning sound as if testing a thought. She reached out, her fingers gripping his sleeve. "Hey, Albin," she began. He turned to face her, a look of surprise on his face as she asked why he was being so kind to her. Her voice grew more insistent as she laid out her reasoning, declaring that she saw him as a victim of a political marriage, forced to wed her. He responded with a disarming smile, stating his desire to be affectionate with his beautiful wife. Taking her hand, he admitted that was just a formal reason, musing that he should be focused on securing her family's support and ignoring her instead. His smile faded, replaced by a serious intensity. He confessed that, truthfully, he wanted to understand what she had done and who she had managed to anger. In response, she tightened her grip on his hand. She insisted that she couldn't get him involved and that it was better for his own good if he didn't know, offering instead to give him a piece of advice. She looked down at him, her expression hardening into a cold mask. "If you want to protect the Audran family," she commanded, "then hate me." The declaration left him utterly stunned. Leticia Barrow recalls her childhood. From the age of 5, her engagement had been decided. As a little girl, She had innocently asked if her betrothed, Duke Maro Bertori, was a good person. But the reality of the man was far from what she had hoped. Her memory of him was of a profoundly foolish man, loudly encouraging women to take whatever they desired from his wealth, while slyly implying a price would be paid. A young Leticia could only watch, her expression uneasy. In the present, she approaches him in a lavish room where he lounges with other women. She calls out his name, Maro. He turns, annoyed, asking what she wants. She attempts to reason with him, explaining that the lives of the common people are being disrupted by the recent tax hikes. She warns that if this continues, they will suffer greatly. He dismisses her concerns with a puff of smoke, coldly demanding that the liaison from the Barrow family refrain from interfering in politics. Leticia freezes, her face flushing with shock and humiliation. Her mortification deepens as whispers ripple through the room around her. She can only stand there, speechless. She turns and walks away. As the doors close, the women on the sofa mock her, one sarcastically repeating her words about thinking too much, while the other remarks on how pitiful she is for being laughed at. Alone in the corridor, she leans against the wall and weeps. She remembers the lifelong lesson she was taught, that he was her precious fiancé, the one she was meant to serve. But despite this conditioning, she finds herself walking through the impoverished streets of a nearby town. From behind the cover of a stone wall, she peers out, her expression a mixture of worry and resolve as she observes the conditions for herself. She watched as the town bell tolled over a scene of utter despair. A child cried from hunger, begging their older sibling for food. A desperate father pleaded for forgiveness, explaining his sick child had resorted to theft. The suffering was everywhere. In the shadows, she took it all in, her heart heavy with the knowledge that for some, it had been the 12th month without proper food. A grim realization settled upon her. If things were to continue this way, with a sharp intake of breath, she turned to a nearby chest, her hands moving with newfound purpose. She considered the taxes collected from suffering people and how Maro was squandering them. Rather than let that happen, she decided she would take action herself, her hand tightening into a fist. 3 years passed. At a grand, opulent ball, the nobility danced, oblivious to the world outside their gilded halls. Suddenly, Duke Moro's voice cut through the revelry, a cruel grin spreading across his face. He pointed directly at Leticia Barrow, announcing for all to hear that, as of that day, their engagement was broken. He was met with her stunned silence, her voice barely a whisper as she asked what he meant. Maro simply scoffed. He then leveled his accusations, claiming she wasn't content with just wasting his family's assets, but had also been embezzling taxes from the territory. He sneered, asking if she truly believed he wouldn't have noticed her actions. The words struck her, leaving her speechless amidst the growing whispers of the crowd. The guests murmured amongst themselves, questioning how a woman of her station, the daughter of the Barrow family, could be a tax embezzler. As she tried to form a defense, Maro delivered his final, cold verdict. He declared that whatever her reasons might have been, a thief is still a thief. With a new, adoring woman clinging to his arm, Duke Maro Bertori pointed accusingly, his voice booming as he declared that Leticia no longer had any right to set foot in his domain. His words struck her, the reality of the situation crashing down. So this was the kind of person he truly was. The whispers and stares of the surrounding crowd confirmed her public disgrace. Her mind retreated into memory, to a cherished view from her childhood she had once dreamed of sharing with Lord Bertori. It was a sight she now realized she would never see again. The loss of that dream hardened her resolve. She told herself she had no right to cry. Yet, the memory of being cast out of her home, ordered to leave, resurfaced with painful clarity. But this was not a surprise. A flicker of determination crossed her face as she affirmed to herself that she understood. She had prepared for this very outcome. 6 months passed. From a window in the Barrow residence, Leticia contemplated her new reality. Her new fiancé was Baron Albin Audrin. Among the nobility, he was known as the worst of the worst, arrogant, glib, and lazy. She believed this engagement was a form of divine punishment for her own perceived misdeeds. But the man she knew was nothing like the rumors. Memories flooded her mind. Albin asking her on a date, assuring her he wasn't hurt, and taking her hand while promising they would protect this land together. He was kind and earnest. The kindness in those memories brought tears to her eyes. He had truly paid attention to her. He had tried to believe in her. This realization fueled a desperate resolve. She was tired of losing what was precious, tired of getting her hopes up only to be disappointed. It was for that very reason she could not involve him, could not put Albin in danger. She hated all of it. The weight of her situation became unbearable. Alone in her room, she collapsed, clutching the fabric of her nightgown as sobs racked her body. Overwhelmed and utterly lost, she could only wonder what she was supposed to do now. In a grand, sunlit hall, Seabass observes that it appears Lady Leticia has been framed. From the far end of the room, Albin Audrin quietly states that's enough. He turns, a chilling smile spreading across his face as a dark thought forms. He wonders aloud how, exactly, he should kill the man responsible. Seabass calmly interrupts his dark musings, questioning if Albin believes the story is as simple as Maro being a scoundrel who framed and discarded Leticia. As Albin mentally plots a convoluted scheme involving kidnapping and assassins, Seabass firmly states that the story is not over and is far more complex. He then reveals a startling fact. Lady Leticia was the one who took assets from the Bertori family. The revelation hits Albin with visible force, his eyes widening in utter shock. He slams his fist down, shouting in vehement denial. It's impossible, he insists, absolutely certain she would never do such a thing. Seabass urges him to remain calm, acknowledging that while it is a fact, there is a reason behind it. Leaning forward, Albin demands to know what that reason could possibly be. As Seabass begins his explanation, a memory surfaces of Lady Leticia, her face alight with a warm, genuine smile as she looks upon a small child. The story unfolds. She embezzled territorial taxes in order to protect abandoned children who were suffering from poverty, providing them with food and shelter. Albin absorbs the truth with a heavy heart. Leticia did it all for those children. Seabass confirms this, explaining she used the funds she was accused of stealing as an investment to raise the standard of living and combat poverty, adding that it's well known she is fond of children. Leaning on the table, Albin mutters how cruel the situation is. He now understands she was forced to clean up the mess created by that incompetent man. A memory of Leticia's determined face flashes in his mind, her hand covering his as she told him to hate her if he was worried for her safety. He stood at the end of the long, ornate hallway, his back to his butler. He called out Seabass's name, and from the far end of the hall, the older man acknowledged him. Seabass, now closer, cut straight to the heart of the matter. He asked what Albin was thinking now that he knew the truth, urging him to speak his mind plainly. The butler added that this was no laughing matter. In response, he turned, a ferocious grin spreading across his face. Clenching his fist with resolve, he told Seabass that he felt the same way and asked for his help. Together, they would teach the scoundrel who framed Leticia the true meaning of the word villain. Leticia Barrow pauses, her hand frozen mid-motion, and stares in disbelief. "What did you just say?" she asks. Across the table, Albin Audrin calmly taps his finger, admitting, "I said I'm the one who spread the rumor." He leans forward with a confident smile, elaborating on the contents of this rumor. It claims that Albin Audrin, seeking to avenge Lady Leticia, is planning to take revenge on Duke Morrow. As Leticia lets out a small sound of astonishment, he confirms, "A rumor just like that." Her astonishment quickly turns to alarm. "If you do that, you'll become Duke Morrow's target," she exclaims, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Albin simply advises her to calm down. Still worried, she asks if there's another rumor. He confirms that he spread a second one at the same time. He reveals the second, contradictory story, that Albin Audrin does not get along with Lady Leticia and intends to secretly get rid of her by bribing Duke Morrow with a large sum of money. Finishing his explanation, he looks at Leticia and says, "That's how it is." She stares back, completely baffled. "But that completely contradicts the previous rumor," she points out, her mind reeling from the conflicting information. A sly grin spreads across his face. "Rumors are most effective against those with malicious intent," he explains. "So this is for the best, isn't it?" Meanwhile, at the Bertori residence, Duke Morrow sits alone, staring at a pile of coins on his table. He mutters in confusion, "Huh? This completely contradicts the previous rumor." He muses aloud to his companion about the various rumors circulating in the city. That Leticia is being held captive or treated like a worn-out rag, or involved with a man of endless ill repute. His companion asks why that would be, and he replies with a confident smirk that the rumor about a bad relationship with Leticia might just be true. His mind conjures a ridiculous image, a tiny, indignant Leticia declaring Albin a man of the worst character, shaking him violently as he panics. The Duke considers the possibility that Albin might even want to kill her. Meanwhile, Albin explains to Leticia that Duke Morrow must be feeling anxious. He declares that he understands now, but reminds her that rumors are just rumors, and there is still one more step to take. He turns to her, his expression serious, and states that for this final step, he needs strong proof from her. In response, Leticia turns away, her hands clasped tightly. She apologizes, refusing to help, explaining that she cannot involve the Audrin family in her personal quest for revenge. He insists that this is not only about her revenge. Leticia turns back to face him, her gaze intense, declaring that she has already heard the truth about all the supposed evil deeds he has committed. He clarifies that everything he has done was for the sake of helping the people of his territory. Leticia acknowledges this, but points out that she still ended up committing evil deeds in the process. He looks at her intently and asks if, knowing the truth now, she regrets her actions. He then answers for himself, stating firmly, "No, not at all." He then looks up at her with a confident smile, adding, "Quite the opposite." He looks at Leticia with sincere gratitude, telling her that after getting to know her, he is thankful from the bottom of his heart. Gently taking her hand in his, he continues, confessing that he has made a heartfelt decision to protect her for the rest of his life. His gaze is filled with conviction as he declares that she is the most worthy person to be his wife. He vows he will never let her go, nor will he ever harm her, even if the world itself were turned upside down. Tears well up in Leticia's eyes, her voice trembling as she whispers his name, Albin. His expression hardens as his thoughts turn to their adversary. He promises her that he will ensure Morrow receives retribution for all the suffering he has caused her, stating that this is precisely why he can never forgive a man. Wiping a tear from her eye, Leticia manages a small smile, remarking that he doesn't sound very much like a villain. The scene shifts to a series of large, imposing structures, the Audran territory's food warehouses. Inside one of the cavernous warehouses, surrounded by stacks of supplies, Albin turns to Leticia and apologizes for making her wait. Suddenly, a new voice cuts through the dusty air. Duke Morrow Bertori has arrived, flanked by his companion. He calls out Leticia's name with a sneer. Her face sets with grim recognition as she identifies him. He holds up a letter, a wide, triumphant grin spreading across his face. He declares his surprise, stating he never thought she would send a letter to him. He held up the letter, remarking on the sheer volume of complaints it contained about Baron Audran, calling it more of a curse than a simple letter. Leticia, her gaze downcast, confessed that she could no longer endure being such a man's wife. Her desperation mounting, she declared that Albin was far worse than Morrow himself. She pleaded to be saved from the Audran family, promising to apologize for everything. In response to her plea, Duke Morrow feigned sympathy, acknowledging that she must have endured great hardship. The woman beside him concurred, remarking that Baron Audran seemed to be a truly terrible man. The facade of concern shattered instantly as he erupted into wild, uncontrollable laughter. His companion watched, bewildered by the sudden outburst. His laughter was cut short by the appearance of a figure from the deeper shadows of the warehouse. It was Baron Audran. Leticia stared in disbelief, whispering Albin's name as he stood before them, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. She turned on Morrow, demanding to know what he had said. He calmly replied, asking if she hadn't realized she was already in communication with the Baron. As Albin steadily approached, Morrow elaborated. He explained that while rumors swirled about their relationship, her letter confirmed his suspicions that it was a poor one. By seeking his aid, he gloated she had pulled the very trigger that would lead to her own destruction. Leticia could only stammer in disbelief. He then admitted his true feelings, confessing a deep-seated hatred for her. He found women who were overly serious to be completely without appeal. All the while, Albin listened in silence, his expression unreadable. He placed a hand on Albin's shoulder, a smug grin spreading across his face. He explained that while she was the daughter of Duke Barrow, all he could do back then was cancel their engagement. Now, however, thanks to her betrayal, he had gained a powerful new ally. The young Baron then turned to the Duke, his voice steady. "Lord Morrow," he said, "your orders, please." He knelt, hand on his sword, awaiting the command. With a cruel smile, Duke Morrow pointed directly at the stunned Leticia Barrow and gave his order, "Kill her." In response, Albin exploded into motion, his blade a silver streak as he surged forward. He declared that he had been waiting for those very words. His charge, however, was not aimed at Leticia. He moved past the Duke's guards with ease and came to a stop beside her. As they walked away together, he complimented her on her excellent acting, and she returned the sentiment, noting how smoothly his part had gone. Duke Morrow could only stare in disbelief, realizing the Bertori family guards were not so great after all. She glanced back at the Duke, her expression one of pure triumph. With a sly smile, she remarked what an honor was to receive such high praise, leaving Morrow utterly aghast. In a grand hall, a guard lies defeated on the floor. Duke Morrow Bertori, standing beside a woman with her hair in buns, points an accusatory finger at Albin Audran. He shouts Albin's name, demanding to know if this is a betrayal. Albin, his expression cold, retorts by asking who the real traitor is, reminding Morrow that he was the one who trapped the woman in the first place. With a sharp sound, he draws his sword, its polished steel glinting under the light. He stands his ground, declaring that he will not forgive Morrow. He tells the Duke to feel for himself the natural despair that Leticia has endured. Both Leticia and the woman with Morrow watch the confrontation with wide eyes. The Duke, however, merely smirks. He expresses surprise that they would plot together, then dismisses their actions as a grave crime of betrayal. His companion agrees, calling them noisy and reminding them they knew the risks. She scoffs, questioning if they really thought a poor lady and a low-ranking baron could defy them without consequences. As she speaks, Morrow's expression hardens. Suddenly, a powerful voice cuts in, asking if it's necessary to correct Lord Albin's position. An imposing older man with an eye patch has appeared, and Duke Morrow turns toward the sound, his face a mask of utter shock. The newcomer orders Duke Morrow Bertori to stand down, refusing to let him feign ignorance. He introduces himself as Yuta Crayon, High Honorary Chairman of the Royal Knights. Morrow can only stammer, questioning how he could possibly be here. He explains that his friend Seabass invited him to visit the Audran territory, and by chance, he overheard something extraordinary. Yuta Crayon's gaze narrows as he asks Morrow about a potential order to kill Duke Barrow's daughter. An aide beside Morrow frantically insists it's not true, claiming it's all a trick by Albin Audran. Unmoved, Yuta Crayon simply asks to see the letter Morrow sent to Albin. The aide freezes in terror. Holding the letter, he reads a line aloud. "If you want to get rid of Leticia, I will help you." He then notes that, within the letter, there is no mention of getting rid of her at all, implying a different phrasing was used. He looks up, stating that he believes the situation is now clear. Stunned and sweating, Duke Morrow points an accusing finger at Albin. He sputters that Albin must have planned this entire confrontation. Albin, with a calm and knowing smile, simply asks what he could possibly mean. His calculated cruelty becomes clear to Leticia, who watches from the side. She realizes he intentionally made sure Yuta Crayon overheard the word kill, while leaving no tangible proof of conspiracy in the letter itself. She thinks to herself that this man is truly ruthless. As a result of the accusation, Yuta Crayon orders his knights to arrest Duke Maro Bertori. Cornered and desperate, his face shadowed with dread, Maro shouts out a challenge, a duel. He throws his arm out, formally declaring his identity as Duke Maro Bertori. To escape his fate, he challenges Baron Albin Audrin to a duel to restore his honor. Albin initially seems annoyed by the troublesome development. However, a sharp, predatory grin spreads across his face as he realizes the opportunity. This, he thinks, is a way he can teach the Duke a lesson fairly. Following his acceptance, the group relocates to a more open hall. Yuta Crayon stands between the two opponents, who now face each other with swords drawn, ready for their duel to commence. The high-ranking knight looks on with his one good eye, his expression stern. He announces that he, Yuta Crayon, will serve as the official witness to this duel. With the term set, Duke Maro grits his teeth, seething with rage as he vows to kill Albin. In contrast, Albin remains composed, stating that he has one question for the Duke before they begin. He asks if Maro has any intention of apologizing to Leticia, offering a sliver of leniency if he shows true remorse. The suggestion enrages the Duke, who screams at him not to joke around and lunges forward, yelling for Albin to die. In response to the reckless charge, Albin moves in a blur, striking the Duke squarely in the face with the pommel of his sword. Maro cries out in agony, clutching his shattered nose. Albin smirks, stating that in that case, he won't hold back, and mockingly asks why Maro is so surprised when he was the one who wanted to kill him. He stands over the fallen Duke, who sputters in disbelief, questioning how a lazy bum like Albin Audrin could have become so powerful and why his own attack failed. Albin calmly explains that it's simple. He's been training diligently for the past 6 months. He continues, telling Maro that while the Duke was busy with women and letting his people suffer, Leticia was working tirelessly to help them. Albin reveals that she always tried to keep Maro from complete self-destruction, even as the common folk die. Enraged, the Duke roars for him to be silent. The furious nobleman scrambles to his feet and lunges forward in a screaming rage, but Albin continues his condemnation. He declares that nobles are nothing but parasites, and that Leticia understood this, risking everything to save the Bertori lands. He effortlessly blocks the Duke's desperate strike. From the sidelines, Leticia watches with concern, calling out Albin's name. Albin's voice is cold as he accuses Maro of trampling all over her feelings. The Duke, utterly incensed, bellows that this is no joke and prepares to swing his sword down with all his might. But Albin is faster. With a single, brutal motion, he brings his blade down, severing Moro's sword arm completely. The Duke collapses, screaming in agony as he stares at the bloody stump where his arm used to be. He looks down on the writhing Duke without a shred of pity. He tells Maro that this is the despair she must have felt, and that he should just die. Just as he prepares to deliver the final blow, Leticia embraces him from behind, holding him close. His eyes widen in surprise at her sudden intervention. He felt her arms wrap around him from behind, her voice a desperate whisper, pleading for him to stop. Her voice, strained with emotion, insisted that this was enough. To go any further, she warned, would only stain his soul. Her words pierced through his rage, and his eyes widened as the bloodlust began to recede. As his battle fury subsided, Leticia released her hold, offering a gentle smile. He could only stammer her name, still processing the sudden shift. She took his hand, looking up at him with gratitude. She thanked him, acknowledging that he had become truly angry on her behalf. Across the dueling grounds, an official's voice declared Baron Albin Audrin the winner. Despite the victory, Albin turned to Leticia, asking if this was truly enough. She affirmed that it was, stating that achieving revenge was more than sufficient. With the matter settled, her expression shifted slightly as she began a new thought. By the way, she continued as they walked away from the arena, remarking on how well-coordinated their acting had been. She mused that they would likely make a good couple. Her suggestion brought a wide, confident smile to his face. He agreed enthusiastically, declaring that they would become the best couple. He elaborated with a laugh, suggesting it sounded good to be known as a villainous woman and a great villain working together. From this day forward, he declared that is what they would be. 1 month after the duel with Maro, on the day of his wedding to Leticia, Albin Audrin is overcome with anxiety. He clutches his face, confessing to Seabass that he is incredibly nervous. Seabass, ever the composed butler, admonishes him, stating that such behavior is unbecoming of a groom and that he must control himself. His heart pounds as he recalls the catalyst for this day, Leticia's own words. She had calmly suggested that since they were to become husband and wife, it would be best to hold a proper wedding ceremony. Seabass affirms her wisdom, explaining to Albin that a wedding is a special rite of passage for a couple to celebrate the beginning of their new life together. He continues his counsel with a stern, knowing look, warning Albin that he must maintain his dignity, lest he disappoint Lady Leticia. The thought of Leticia in her wedding gown suddenly fills Albin with excitement. He exclaims that he truly wants to see her, certain she will look beautiful. Seabass smiles faintly, remarking that Albin's father was also terribly nervous during his own wedding ceremony, just as Albin is now. This mention of his father sobers him. Albin looks towards Seabass, his expression turning thoughtful as he remembers that his parents passed away before he was old enough to truly know them. In response to the unspoken sentiment, Seabass bows deeply, He declares that being able to attend the wedding ceremonies of the Audrin family for 2 generations is a great honor for him. Albin looks down, visibly moved by the old butler's profound loyalty. He crouches down to meet Seabass's gaze, a warm and genuine smile spreading across his face. He tells the man that he is like a father to him. The word strikes Seabass with overwhelming force. His eyes widen in disbelief and profound emotion as he whispers Albin's name. Overcome, he covers his face and begins to weep with joy. Albin grins, teasingly remarking that all his hard work raising such a naughty boy has finally paid off. From a nearby doorway, Leticia, now in her gown, asks if they are ready to depart. Meanwhile, Leticia speaks with her maid. The maid asks if she is still nervous, but Leticia replies that her nerves have calmed. The maid observes that it seems no relatives from the Audrin family are attending, to which Leticia explains that this is precisely why everyone is giving her so much attention, to ensure she does not feel alone. She touched the delicate necklace at her throat, a sudden understanding dawning on her. She finally knew why she was so nervous now, in a way she never was during her engagement party with Morrow. This profound realization sent her heart pounding as she gazed at her reflection. She was about to be bound to someone she truly loved from the very bottom of her heart. But a flicker of doubt remained. She wondered if this vague anxiety about the future meant that the new life she was about to build with her husband would be completely erased before it could even begin. Meanwhile, Albin peeked through a curtain, his face alight with a wide, irrepressible grin. More than anything, he was simply overflowing with happiness. His bride-to-be was approached from behind by Seabass. He announced that he had come to perform the veil-down ceremony. Leticia, caught off guard, remarked to herself that this unsteadiness was not like her at all. She then smiled softly, a newfound acceptance in her eyes. Perhaps, she thought, it was all right if she wasn't her usual self today. Across the hall, Albin stood waiting, his composure completely gone. He was in trouble. He was so nervous he felt a bird might fly right out of his mouth. He tried to calm himself by mentally rehearsing the ceremony. First, he and Leticia would walk the Virgin Road. Then, he would perform the veil up, say the vows, and exchange rings. He winced, realizing his mistake about the veil. His frantic thoughts were cut short by an official announcement calling for the groom to enter the room. The sudden summons startled him. At that moment, the grand doors swung open. Albin turned, his eyes widening as he saw Leticia standing there, veiled and holding her bouquet, ready to begin her walk toward him. She is escorted down the aisle by Seabass. As Albin watches her approach, he is left breathless, thinking she is incredibly beautiful, truly captivating, like an angel. He corrects his internal thought. She is more than an angel, a goddess descended from the heavens. Seeing his intense gaze, Leticia grows flustered and quietly asks if there is something on her face. Startled, Albin quickly denies that anything is wrong, stammering that he was simply captivated by her beauty. Leticia blushes at the praise, deciding to accept it as a simple courtesy. Despite her attempt to dismiss it, she is genuinely happy and thanks him. Albin realizes he isn't the only one feeling nervous. As they stand together at the altar, the officiant formally presents the groom, Albin Audrin, and the bride, Leticia Audrin. The officiant begins the ceremony, asking them to vow to be together in sickness and in health, to love and honor one another for all their lives, until death do they part. Albin looks at Leticia and firmly swears his oath. The officiant then prompts them to exchange rings. As they prepare to do so, Albin notices Leticia's hand is trembling. She apologizes, explaining that she has suddenly become scared. A dark thought crosses her mind, a familiar doubt. Does a cursed girl like her truly deserve happiness? Shattering her internal prison of doubt, Albin declares with absolute certainty that she deserves happiness. He makes a solemn promise to her. He will be the one to make her happy, to ensure she becomes the happiest person in the entire world. With that promise, he gently slides the wedding band onto her finger, a physical symbol of his vow. Tears welling in her eyes, Leticia confesses that she, too, is truly happy. Albin agrees, admitting this may be the happiest moment of his entire life. He then leans closer, whispering that it is still too early to declare this their best moment. He smiles gently, explaining that this is merely the beginning. From now on, he will make her feel this happy again and again. Overcome with emotion, Leticia realizes that if their best moments continue to accumulate, they won't be able to choose the true best one until they are old and gray. She shed a tear of joy, which Albin gently wiped away. He told her that a smile suited her far better. Leticia agreed, her heart full, acknowledging that another happiness had just been added to her life. As he lifted her veil, he made a silent, resolute vow. He would do anything to protect that smile. The couple sealed their vows with a kiss. In the vast hall below, guests cheered as petals drifted down around them. He swept her up into his arms, both of them beaming with joy. From that day forward, they would be known as Albin and Leticia Audrin, a truly interesting couple. Elsewhere, in a stately office, Yuta Crayon turned to an older man. He asked for the opinion of Faust, the headmaster of the academy. The headmaster remained silent, deep in thought. Yua's aide observed that Faust seemed to be against the idea, adding that it was hardly surprising given the nasty rumors circulating about the couple. Finally, Faust Melahizdek, the headmaster of the Royal Academy, spoke. He proposed a solution. As a special exception, they should hold a unique entrance exam just for them. A calculating look glinted in his aged eyes. Outside the Audrin estate, a carriage stands ready. Leticia is surrounded by her tearful maids, who bid her a heartfelt farewell. They urge her to take care of herself in the royal capital and to return anytime she feels overwhelmed. As a final promise, they tell her they will send the vegetables they planted together once they are harvested. She embraces them, trying to offer comfort despite the sorrowful atmosphere. Leticia tells them not to be so sad, reassuring them with a gentle smile that she will certainly be back in 3 years. Her words do little to soothe the maids, who continue to weep. They cry out that they truly don't want to be separated from her, with one even pleading to become her personal servant. Watching the scene unfold, Seabass addresses the distraught servants. He reminds them that it is their duty to protect the Audren mansion and its lands. He then speaks of Leticia, acknowledging that while she may be strict, she possesses a kind heart and a truly captivating spirit. A single tear escapes Albin's eye as he internalizes the weight of his new position. He is the head of the family now. A memory surfaces, a young man addressing him respectfully as Albin-sama, followed by the image of him kneeling before Leticia, gently taking her hand in his. Seabass's voice echoes with concern and loyalty. He warns Albin to be careful at the academy, then bows deeply, pledging his strength and support whenever it might be needed. From inside the moving carriage, he smiles confidently back toward the estate. He tells Seabass not to worry, questioning who he thinks has been training him for the past 6 months. Now 16 years old, the newlywed couple travels to gain their qualifications as nobles. Their destination is a grand and imposing structure, the Magdala Familia Royal Academy. Upon arrival, the long journey by carriage proves to have been an ordeal for Albin, who is bent over in discomfort. A young woman greets them formally, announcing that they have been awaiting the arrival of Albin, Audren, and Leticia Barrow. He is met by 2 academy staff members who inform him that while a room has been prepared for Leticia, he must make preparations for an exam. The news startles Leticia, who asks what they mean by an exam. Albin turns to her, a small puff of air escaping his lips, and tells her not to worry. He reassures her that it seems the Morrow family still wishes to play games with him. His expression hardens into a confident smirk as he resolves to put an end to this boring charade. He is then led to an outdoor training ground, where another young man stands waiting by a series of archery targets. The waiting student scowls, muttering that the brat has finally arrived. An instructor, identified as Bastion Sensei, formally presents Baron Albin Audren. Albin looks on with a tired, annoyed expression, internally noting the other student's irritating face and vowing to throw his shameful failure back at him. The student immediately erupts, shouting that Albin is late. In stark contrast, Albin simply smiles and politely asks for his assistance for the day. He then turns his fury on the instructor, questioning if Albin is truly serious about entering the academy. He declares that making an examiner wait is unforgivable and seems to believe his arrogant attitude should be intimidated. His tirade continues as he confronts Albin directly, demanding to know how he dares to speak to him in such a manner. Unfazed, Albin calmly replies that his carriage was not late, implying that they were the ones who chose to wait. Before the argument can escalate, Bastion Sensei intervenes, pointing a finger forward and announcing that the exam will now begin. His instruction is simple. Albin is to shoot his magic toward the target. The student examiner watched with a contemptuous sneer, utterly convinced that the new arrival couldn't possibly perform such a feat. He was taken aback by the examiner's certainty, who explained condescendingly that magic is something one learns only after enrolling in the academy. In response, he simply raised his hand, channeling his power into his fingertips as he invoked the name of his spell, Darkness Flame. He unleashed the spell, a bolt of dark energy that shot forward and completely obliterated the target, leaving only a smoldering ruin in its place. The examiner stared in utter disbelief, sweating as he tried to comprehend what he had just witnessed. He wondered if it was composite magic, a skill he himself couldn't even activate. Albin turned to face him with a confident smile, asking if he had passed or failed. He explained that this was the result of his training with Seabass for the past 6 months, which included not just swordsmanship, but also the magic now ingrained in him. The examiner could only grit his teeth in silent fury. The examiner, recovering his composure, announced the next test, a sparring match. He declared that if Albin could score a single point, he would be considered to have passed. He lunged forward, but Albin calmly deflected the attack. Albin acknowledged his opponent's skill, but stated he would only need one hand to win, which enraged the examiner, who roared at him not to underestimate it. With a swift, fluid motion, Albin disarmed his opponent, sending the sword flying as he tapped the examiner's head. 1 point, he stated calmly, leaving the examiner on the ground, utterly defeated. He stood over the fallen examiner, his training sword held casually at his side, the clear victor of the impromptu duel. He looked down upon his defeated opponent with a confident smirk, thinking him a simple fool. The examiner, still reeling on the ground, was in awe of the power he had just witnessed, wondering if it was swordsmanship or magic, and desperately wanted to see more. His thoughts were cut short by an authoritative voice from the entrance, commanding them to stop. Both young men turned in surprise toward the imposing figure standing in the doorway. The examiner's eyes widened in shock as he recognized the newcomer, Headmaster Faust. This was no mere administrator, but Faust Melchizedek, the head of the Magdala Familia Royal Academy and one of the most renowned great mages in the entire Valan Kingdom. The headmaster addressed Albin directly, confirming his identity as Baron Albin Audren. Faust revealed that he was aware of him, due to a recommendation from the Crayon family, who had described Albin as a rare talent that appears only once a century. Ignoring Alban et surprise, Faustus attention shifted. He called out to Bastian, ordering him to swiftly punish the examiner for the transgression of harming an instructor. His gaze hardened as he delivered the final verdict to the young man. Incompetent people, he declared, were not needed at the academy. He was to pack his things and leave immediately. The examiner's world crumbled. He reached out a trembling hand, his face a mask of pure despair. With a final curse, he collapsed to the floor. Albin watched the scene unfold, his own expression unreadable. With the matter concluded, Headmaster Faust turned back to Albin. He formally accepted him into the Royal Academy and advised him to study diligently with all his heart. Bowing respectfully, Albin offered his sincere thanks. He remained bowed as Headmaster Faust delivered a stern lecture. For the future, he was to restrain himself and not toy with the instructors, reminding him to be mindful of his place as a mere student. He walked away, reflecting on the scolding he'd just received. While he felt he'd gotten off easy this time, he made a mental note to be more careful and not overdo it in the future. As he turned to leave, Headmaster Faust called out, specifying that he and one other person, in particular, would be housed in a separate building. This confused Albin, who noted that the men's dormitory was in the other direction, but Faust simply gestured towards his new residence. He followed the headmaster's instructions, arriving at a large, imposing door. Bursting through the door with a cheerful, "Excuse me," he found his sister, Leticia, sitting calmly with a cup. He paused, wondering who could possibly be in this room. She looked up from her cup, calmly informing him that this was not the girls' dormitory. She explained that she had been brought here directly on the headmaster's orders, just as he had. The realization struck him with full force. He was to share a room with Leticia. His mind immediately jumped to scandalous conclusions, and he silently cursed the headmaster, questioning the old man's outrageous intentions. As she watched him with a gentle, knowing smile, he stammered that he would immediately speak with the headmaster to arrange for separate rooms. Elsewhere, a hand moved a black knight across a chessboard, the name Leticia hanging in the air with quiet significance. The player was Yuta Crayon, seated across from Headmaster Faust. You asked if the headmaster could now perceive the immense talent dormant within Albin Audron. Faust conceded that he understood the recommendation. You elaborated, describing Albin as strong and noble, but also warning that a devil seemed to reside within his heart, a force he cannot control. He then directly questioned Faust, asking if this inner conflict was the very reason he had placed Albin and Leticia in the same room. It was understood that Miss Leticia was to be a vessel for a wise king. In this way, she would become the woman desperately needed by Baron Albin Audron. Reflecting on this, Yuta Crayon remarked to Headmaster Faust that he was eager to see what would become of the two of them in the future. The headmaster listened, a thoughtful expression on his face. He then turned his attention back to a game board, declaring checkmate. He mused aloud that the new school rules would also be implemented this year, a fact that seemed to please him as he looked out over the academy grounds. Meanwhile, elsewhere at the academy, a young man seethed with rage. He cursed, his face contorted in fury, believing that everyone was underestimating him. His furious gaze settled on a young woman with glasses, who was sitting peacefully by a well, engrossed in a book. He stalked towards her, his shadow falling over the unsuspecting student. He lunged, grabbing her shoulder from behind. The woman cried out in shock as he snarled, blaming Albin Audron for his perceived humiliation. His assault was cut short as another hand clamped down on his wrist, stopping him cold. The bully stared in disbelief at the sudden intervention, demanding to know who dared to interfere. The bully now lay defeated on the cracked cobblestones, groaning that this was all Albin Audron's fault. Her rescuer gently helped the woman to her feet, asking if she was all right. She confirmed that she was. She looked up at the calm young man in the academy uniform, a training sword at his hip. A flicker of recognition crossed her face as she uttered his name in question. Albin. Within the academy grounds, Albin Audron lounges on a bench, letting out a massive yawn. Nearby, two female students whisper amongst themselves, identifying him as the infamous Baron with a terrible reputation. One notes that he is now an instructor for the entrance ceremony and suggests they should avoid getting involved with him. He gets up and walks away, a thoughtful expression on his face. He wonders why Leticia is taking so long. Although she had excused herself to pick flowers, he has a bad feeling about her prolonged absence. His premonition proves correct. He spots a group of young women gathered together. The one at the forefront, holding a fan, sneers with contempt. She questions how a girl from a fallen noble house could shamelessly enter the academy, wondering if there's truly a place for such a person there. She leans in close to Leticia, her voice dripping with malice. She calls her a perfumed, barking dog with a human face, remarking that she's even closer than she'd anticipated. Leticia lowers her head, silently enduring the verbal assault. As the insults continue, one of the other girls lunges forward, hand raised to strike. She shouts at Leticia, questioning why she is being so condescending. From a distance, Albin sees the attack about to land and cries out Leticia's name. Before his warning can reach her, a young man suddenly appears, catching the attacker's wrist and stopping her cold. The girl stares in shock at the unexpected intervention. The newcomer's eyes narrow with disapproval. He calmly asks the group if ganging up on one person is something that nobles should be doing. His pointed question leaves the would-be attacker speechless, realizing it's useless to argue. Having rushed to the scene, Albin skids to a halt, his hand clenching into a tight fist. The young man turns his attention to Leticia, asking if she is unharmed. She thanks him for helping her, but he dismisses it, saying he simply couldn't stand by and do nothing. Watching from afar, Albin internally fumes, wondering who this flashy guy thinks he is. In her gratitude, Leticia clutches the young man's arm. The sight makes Albin freeze, his expression twisting from shock into one of profound irritation. He steps forward, placing a possessive arm around Leticia. With a strained smile, he thanks the young man for helping his wife, but warns him not to dare get any closer. The sudden declaration startles Leticia, who exclaims his name. The stranger is also taken aback, apologizing and realizing she is married. He identifies Albin as Baron Audrin, remarking that their marriage is a topic of conversation even among commoners. The young man, recovering his composure, extends a hand with a flourish. He introduces himself as Lionel Hylant, but insists they simply call him Leo. Albin's hand remains clenched at his side, refusing the gesture. She looks back at Albin, questioning his tense silence, while Lionel watches them with a friendly smile. His expression darkens, his eyes narrowing into a silent, simmering glare. He turns and walks away with Leticia, leaving Lionel behind as they proceed down a long, ornate hallway. As they walk, Leticia speaks to him with a knowing smile. She correctly guesses that he's already plotting how to get Lionel expelled from the academy, reminding him that as his wife, she knows him well. She continues, telling him to stop making such a face. She assures him that she has no interest in Lionel and that there's no need to drive him away. Her words catch him off guard, his steps faltering. Leticia turns back to him, suggesting he should try to get along with Leo. From a balcony above, Lionel spots the couple. He calls out cheerfully, recognizing Baron Audrin and Lady Leticia. Albin freezes, startled and annoyed by the man's sudden reappearance. He found himself in a bustling classroom, where an overly enthusiastic female student expressed her delight at being in the same class. As she leaned in close, Leticia stepped between them, politely asking the girl to keep her voice down. The classroom was a mix of personalities. Albin and Leticia sat together, while other students were scattered about, some appearing studious, others bored, and a few already sizing each other up with competitive glares. Suddenly, the door flew open and a woman with immense energy burst in, wishing everyone a good afternoon. She introduced herself as Paula Velvet, the homeroom teacher for Class F, and asked for their cooperation. Seeing their subdued reactions, she wondered aloud why they were all so lethargic, then raised a hand as if to ask a question. Before she could speak, a conflict ignited. A student with glasses, identifying himself as Ivan of the esteemed Duke's Scottish family, questioned why the class was filled with such a rabble. His disdain was aimed at a defiant-looking young man, whom he accused of being of a lower station. The targeted student's expression hardened as he demanded to know what Ivan meant by calling them lowly. In a flash of movement, the defiant student leaped onto the windowsill, looking down on the noble. A nearby girl with short hair gasped, startled by the sudden escalation. From his elevated position, he calmly pointed out that the Duke's son must have skipped the entrance ceremony. He reminded Ivan of the headmaster's words. Within the academy, social status is to be forgotten. Ivan scoffed, asking if the commoner truly believed that made them equals. The rising tension was palpable, causing the timid girl to tremble in her seat. Then, a sharp clap cut through the air. Paula Velvet smiled brightly, getting everyone's attention. She announced that, first, there was something she wanted them all to do. Her smile turned mischievous as she held up a piece of chalk. She explained that a new school rule was starting this year, and that one of them would be chosen for a special role. With a dramatic flourish, she scrawled the word king on the blackboard. She wanted them, she declared, to decide who among them would rule the class. The students, including Albin Audrin and Lionel Hylant, stare in stunned silence, the word king echoing in their minds with confusion. In response to their bewilderment, Paula Velvet grins, declaring a shame for the 9 losers. She commands them to swear absolute obedience to the king until graduation. Ivan Scottish immediately objects, shouting that this is a joke and that he'd never heard of such a rule before enrolling. Ignoring his outburst, another student, Matthias Wolf, casually addresses the teacher. With a relaxed posture, he acknowledges that it's a new school rule and simply asks how they are supposed to decide who the king will be. Paula turns back to the blackboard, explaining that she is leaving it entirely up to them. They can compete through academics, discussion, violence, or even money. As long as it isn't murder, she declares, any method is acceptable. She continues with a crucial condition, a sly smile playing on her lips. If a king is not chosen within 1 month, then every single one of them will be expelled from the school. With a final, dramatic gesture, she encourages them to use all the skills they've honed to get rid of everyone else. The other students listen, their expressions a mixture of shock, determination, and cold calculation. The challenge is immediately taken up by Roan Stellation. He leaps to his feet, proposing they hold a duel against everyone. The last one standing, he proclaims, will be the one most worthy of being king. His Barbera proposal is met with disdain from Estelle Applebury. Fanning herself, she retorts that a king must be elegant and graceful, implying his brutish methods are unsuitable. As tensions rise, Shano Agrain quietly pleads for them not to fight, her gentle voice a stark contrast to the aggressive posturing around her. Finally, Matthias Wolf offers his own perspective with unshakable confidence. He tells them all that it is the law of nature for the strong to rule the world. Therefore, they should all submit to him, the strongest. As the declarations of candidacy continued, another student chimed in. Lucky Azalea, from seat number 5, casually remarked that she was fine with anyone taking the role of king. In stark contrast, the student from seat number 7, Carla Rexon, remained silent and imposing behind her mask. From seat number 3, Ivan Scottish adjusted his glasses with a smirk, declaring that all others were lowly. A true king, he asserted, must possess dignity. Nearby, Leonil Hylant of seat 8, Albin Audrin of seat 9, and Leticia Audrin of seat 18 listened to the unfolding chaos. His pronouncement drew the attention of Matthias Wolf, who lounged nearby. He called out to Ivan, questioning his talk of dignity and suggesting that there was someone present with far more of it than him. Before a new conflict could erupt, Leticia Audrin raised her hand, addressing the instructor, Paula Velvet. She asked if it was permissible to recommend someone other than herself for the position of king, adding that if so, she had only one thing to say. She then turned, wrapping her arm around his stunned Albin. With unwavering confidence, she declared to the entire class that the most worthy person to become king was her husband, Albin Audrin. The other students looked on in shock. Her declaration was met with an immediate counterproposal from Leonil Hylant. He calmly suggested that, for the time being, they should simply determine who among them was the strongest. Leticia dismissed the idea with a confident smile. She stated that such a contest was irrelevant, as her choice was absolute, Albin. She then challenged the others, asking if they truly believed they could win against him with mere numbers. As the most powerful students in the class, Roan, Ivan, and Matthias all turned their attention toward him, Albin finally broke. He let out a desperate cry, wailing that this was all far too much trouble. Ivan Scottish recoils in disbelief, scoffing at the absurd notion that the notoriously lazy Baron Audrin could be the strongest king. Leticia Audrin meets his skepticism with a confident smirk, telling him she will prove it is a fact. She declares that Albin will demonstrate it himself. On the dueling grounds, Albin Audrin steps forward. Across the field, 3 students, Roan Stalasian, Matthias Wolf, and another wielding a large axe, stand ready to face him. He brings a gloved hand to his face, sweat beading on his brow as he sighs, lamenting what a pain this all is. Matthias Wolf calls out to him, suggesting they should duel one-on-one. The axe-wielding student chimes in, warning Albin that once the fight begins, they will not hold back. He lets out another exasperated sigh, muttering about how bothersome this is. Yet a subtle shift in his expression indicates a decision has been made. His thoughts turn to Leticia. He cannot betray his wife's expectations. With a cold, confident smile, he addresses his opponents, musing that the best way to crush lowly insects is all at once. He challenges all 3 of them to attack him together. Roan Stalasian grins eagerly, accepting the challenge. As Ivan watches from the side, Matthias Wolf leaps high into the air, spear pointed downwards for a strike. The duel begins. The 3 students charge as one, their killing intent palpable. The axe wielder swings low, Ivan lunges forward with his sword, and Matthias dives from above. However, with a single, effortless motion, Albin parries all 3 attacks simultaneously, sending his opponents reeling. He declares their efforts are far too lacking to satisfy him. From the ground, Ivan can only stare in shock at the impossible display of power. In an instant, Roan and Matthias are defeated. As Leticia and Estelle watch from the sidelines, only Ivan is left standing before Albin. The remaining opponent trembles, cursing under his breath as the reality of his situation sinks in. He prepares his attack as the instructor, Paula Velvet, announces the duel's conditions. She explains that magic seals in the arena will prevent fatal injuries, so the combatants should fight without hesitation. With that encouragement, Ivan Scottish unleashes a torrent of dark liquid, forming an aqua whip. The whip lashes out towards Albin, who calmly observes its approach. Ivan shouts that he is a member of the Duke's Scottish family, questioning how Albin could possibly use magic as well. He sidesteps the attack with ease, the whip striking the ground where he just stood. Unimpressed, Albin simply remarks, "Oh, is that so?" Before Ivan can react, Albin closes the distance in a flash and brings his sword down, striking his opponent. As Ivan falls, Paula Velvet cheerfully announces his defeat. With the last opponent defeated, she declares Albin Audrin the winner of the duel. From the sidelines, Leticia praises him for his amazing performance. Albin seems to fish for more compliments, but Paula tells him they can talk more later in his room before moving on. Her attention then shifts to Estelle Applebury, who recoils in shock. Paula asks if she's certain she's all right, pointing out that she didn't even get a chance to cross sword with Albin. The question sends Estelle into a panic. Crying, she screams that it's a joke, questioning how she could possibly be expected to fight a monster like it. Ignoring the distraught student, Paula turns back to Albin. She admits that watching his fight has made her want to test her own skills against his, regardless of the outcome. Their hands meet, sealing the arrangement. Albin internally curses his situation, reflecting that even though he has tried his best to avoid it, fate seems to be forcing him to continue fighting. This path leads him toward a confrontation with Leonil Hylant. For this world is that of a fantasy novel, and Leonil is its protagonist, the very man destined to drive Albin into the abyss of ruin. He stood ready, his sword held firm. Across from him, Albin Audrin's blade met his, the signal for the duel to begin echoing across the training grounds. The instant the word was given, they exploded into motion. Albin lunged low, his sword a dark blur, while Leonil vaulted over the attack, countering from above in a swift, acrobatic exchange. Their blades locked briefly, bringing them face to face. Leonil offered a grin of genuine surprise, admitting that Albin was quite skilled. Albin returned the sentiment with a confident smirk, acknowledging his opponent's prowess. He pushed back, creating distance, but the realization was galling. Even though he had underestimated Leonil's talent, he found his opponent was his equal. This, he mused with utter disgust, was the so-called plot armor of a protagonist. His frustration boiled over. He shouted that Leonil was indeed great, and that was precisely what made it so infuriating, as he'd never expected anyone to match him this closely. From across the arena, Leonil yelled back, declaring an honor to be acknowledged by someone of Albin's caliber. Watching from the sidelines, Leticia Audrin could only breathe a single word in awe of the spectacle. Beside her, Estelle Applebury smiled knowingly, while Carla Rexon remained impassive. The exchange had gone on long enough. Albin decided to reward his opponent's skill by showing him a fraction of his true power. He felt the shift immediately, the pressure from Albin's blade intensifying to a staggering degree, forcing a grunt of effort from him. With a predatory gleam in his eyes, Albin lunged forward, his sword aimed for a decisive strike. He declared that their game was now over. But his blade was met not with flesh, but with steel. Leonil had not only blocked the attack, but had vanished and reappeared at his side, his own sword now poised to strike. Albin's eyes widened in disbelief as Leonil spoke, as if he had finally found his opening. A sharp impact sent Albin reeling back. He had landed a clean strike, but his opponent's reaction was not one of pain or shock. Instead, a wide, manic grin spread across Albin Audrin's face as their blades remained locked. The unexpected blow seemed to have only invigorated him. With a surge of power, he broke the clash, unleashing a furious, sweeping strike that sent Leonil flying backward. The force of the blow shattered the ground, kicking up dust and debris as Leonil was thrown across the dueling field. He landed hard, his sword clattering away as he collapsed to the ground, defeated. From the sidelines, Carla Rexon, Estelle Applebury, and Shano Agrain watched the sudden conclusion, their expressions a mixture of shock and concern. The duel was over. Raising her arm to the sky, Paula Velvet's voice boomed across the field, declaring Albin Audrin the winner. Albin himself stood panting, looking over at his fallen adversary. Leonil, still kneeling, looked up and complimented Albin on his strength, admitting he couldn't keep up. Albin, however, was furious. He demanded Leonil stop joking, insisting he had been fighting seriously. He couldn't comprehend how someone with no apparent training could be so powerful. He dismissed the praise, stating that he was actually keenly aware of his own shortcomings. Albin admitted that, thanks to Leonil, he now had a better understanding of his own limits. Leonil smiled warmly at the words, though his thoughts were far from kind. He mused that Albin was just as he expected, truly dangerous. He realized that if Albin continued to grow and surpass the novel's original plot, his own destruction would be unavoidable. As Leonil plotted, a dark realization settled over Albin. If things continued on this path, he could not possibly allow this man to live freely. His internal monologue concluded. Leonil's expression shifted to one of cheerful resolution. He had made a decision. He then extended his hand towards the bewildered Albin, offering a handshake. Albin stared at the offered hand, a question mark hanging in the air between them. He watched, bewildered, as Leonil Hylant ignored the offered handshake. Instead, the noble student knelt before him on one knee, placing a hand over his heart in a gesture of fealty. With utmost seriousness, Leonil declared that he would become Albin's knight. He then looked up, his eyes wide with conviction, and began to address the stunned crowd. He started by formally announcing the name of Baron Albin Audrin, but it was Estelle Applebury who finished the proclamation. With a confident smile, she declared a recommendation for Albin to be the class king. The announcement sent a ripple through the assembled students. Some looked intrigued, others displeased. Ivan Scottish scowled from his seat, while Albin himself could only stare in utter disbelief at the turn of events. In the bustling town, Albin Audrin reflects on his recent victory. He was crowned king by Leonil Hylant, a title he considers meaningless. The true prize was this very moment, a date with Leticia. He dismisses all other thoughts, focusing entirely on her as she holds his arm. He savors the taste of a sweet treat, made all the more delicious because Leticia is feeding it to him. She asks if he likes it, and he confirms he does. With a slight blush, she explains that this is in return for him feeding her earlier. Their public display of affection does not go unnoticed. A pair of female students from the Prince's Academy watch from a distance, whispering about the couple's intimacy in broad daylight. The unwanted attention makes Leticia flush. She quickly takes Albin's hand, declaring that she heard about a good tea shop in a nearby alley, and pulls him along to escape the onlookers' gazes. She leads him through the streets with a determined smile. Pointing ahead, she announces that they have arrived at their destination. Albin follows, looking toward the building she indicated. Meanwhile, Just outside that very shop, a young woman with short hair opens the door. Inside, Shanoa Grain looks out the window, her eyes widening as she recognizes Albin. She wonders aloud what he's doing there, and her companion points out that the girl with him is their classmate. As Albin and Leticia step inside, a small bell above the door jingles, announcing their arrival. A pleasant woman in an apron greets them with a warm smile, welcoming them and inviting them to choose any seat they like. The woman's eyes fall upon the crest on their uniforms, and she correctly identifies them as students from the Royal Academy. She then turns to her daughter, informing her that the preparations are complete. From behind a nearby curtain, Shanoa peeks out. Her expression is one of pure shock as she sees who the new customers are. Her hiding spot is rendered useless as Leticia spots her and offers a cheerful greeting. Utterly flustered, Shanoa stumbles back, stammering their names and titles and questioning why they are in her family's shop. As she collapses in shock, her mother calmly asks if these are her friend from school. She recovered from her initial shock, apologizing for the wait as she carefully placed a cup of tea and a scone before her guests. Leticia immediately recognized the aroma, asking if it was Rahina tea from the Siren Highlands. Shanoa, surprised, confirmed that she was correct. Taking a sip, Leticia noted that she is quite particular when it comes to tea. Albin agreed, declaring the tea delicious and a perfect match for the scone, with a unique flavor and no bitterness. Leticia praised Shanoa's great skill, causing her to blush. Her mother then proudly added that her daughter is a quick learner with many talents. The praise triggered a memory for Shanoa of her mother telling her that this was why she should go to a good school and find a stable job. In the memory, a younger Shanoa cried out in protest. She had insisted to her mother that she would continue the family business, declaring it a precious place that her father had left for them. Pulled back to the present, Shanoa was startled by a question from Leticia, who asked if she was interested in becoming the king. Flustered, Shanoa replied that she was not the type of person suited to lead others. Leticia smiled, seemingly satisfied with the response. She announced that she liked the shop very much and, from that day on, would become a regular customer, leaving Shanoa utterly stunned. As they left the shop, Leticia asked Albin if he had any objections, and he readily agreed the tea was wonderful. She then turned to Shanoa and asked her to make it for her again after school the next day. The following day, however, Albin was left behind, lamenting that he was the only one who couldn't go because he had to perform maintenance on his sword. In the distance, Leticia and Shanoa waved goodbye as they headed off. As he stood alone, a sharp knock echoed from his door. He turned, surprised, wondering who the visitor could be. He opens the door to find a cheerful young woman, Lucky Azalea, who announces she has come to play. He recognizes her immediately. She steps inside, remarking on the size of his private dormitory. She playfully chides him, saying he should be happier that a cute girl like her came all this way to see him. Sword in hand, he cuts straight to the point, asking what she wants. In response, she turns and apologizes, explaining that she isn't happy because she knows nothing about him. She proposes they get to know each other right then and there, admitting she's become very curious about it. His hand tightens into a fist. He silently reflects that if she wanted to be friendly, she should have at least waited until Leticia was present. As he thinks this, she closes the distance, wrapping her arms around his. She dismisses his concern, pointing out that his relationship with Leticia is just a loveless, fake engagement. He stammers in surprise. She leans in closer, gently touching his cheek, and states that it's obvious from his behavior in class that he's still a virgin. Besides, she adds, Leticia seems like a difficult person to get close to. She correctly guesses that he's eager to graduate from his inexperience. In a swift motion, she sheds her dress, standing before him in her undergarments. Taking his hand, she boldly offers to be the one to give him that experience. While he remains silent and unmoving, she begins to untie a ribbon on her lingerie. She assures him they won't be interrupted, stating she knows Leticia is away in the city and won't be back for some time. She presses his hand against her thigh, looking up at him. She whispers that since they have this opportunity, she will do anything he desires. His response is not what she expected. A dark, menacing aura envelopes him, his eyes glowing with cold fury. He commands her to get away from him, issuing a chilling ultimatum. If you don't, I'll kill you. Unfazed, Lucky lets out a soft, satisfied sigh. She playfully questions Albin's resistance, asking why he's making things difficult. With a confident smile, she declares that he is destined to become the king of Class F, and that if Leticia were to be by his side, she would be the one to support him. Continuing her proposition, she admits to having no strength or power of her own, which is why she desires the throne of the queen. With a sly wink, she challenges him to do his best to resist being conquered by her, before turning to leave. Just as Lucky departs, Leticia appears in the doorway. She calls out to Albin, her expression serious, and asks if someone had just been in his room. She takes a sharp sniff of the air, her senses on alert. He sits slumped on his bed, sword resting beside him, and explains that a man had come to set a honey trap. He claims to have successfully resisted and sent the person away. Leticia reacts with stunned disbelief, demanding to know what he just said. Her mind races as she processes his words. She presses him for details, asking if he saw the person's naked body. Albin quietly confirms that he did. A dark look crosses her face. She then asks if he touched the intruder. He corrects her, stating that it was the other way around. The intruder had touched him. Flustered by his admission, Leticia suddenly asks if she still looks like a virgin to him. Her question catches Albin completely off guard, and he wonders aloud how a man could possibly know such a thing just by looking. Ignoring his confusion, she takes a determined step forward. "Yes," she says with conviction, "now is the time." Albin can only echo her words in a questioning tone, unsure of her meaning. She stands before a dresser, her back to him, acknowledging that he has always been considerate of her feelings. However, she declares that the current situation is an emergency. His eyes widen in realization as he watches her hands move towards the back of her dress. A single thought forms in his mind. So tonight, he remains frozen as Leticia leans over him, her nightgown slipping from her shoulder. With a confident smile, she declares that she will wager her own body. Her gaze intensifies, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as her resolve hardens. Closing the distance, she presses her lips against his. She whispers, asking if he truly doesn't desire her, reminding him that she is his to be tempted. The memory of that night surfaces in his mind. The night he passed his exam, a night filled with an overwhelming longing for her. The following day, the intensity of the previous night gives way to the public setting of the academy. Albin and Leticia sit together, impeccably dressed, a picture of composure. From a distance, Matthias, Estelle, and Shanoa observe them. The onlookers murmur amongst themselves. Matthias observes that the couple's aura feels different, somehow. Shanoa agrees, noting they seem more self-assured than before and wonders what could have transpired between them. Their quiet moment is shattered as a door bursts open. A girl with bright pigtails bounds in, cheerfully calling out to Alcuin. She playfully asks if he was up all night thinking about her. She continues, proposing they spend the day together, but her words hang in the air. Leticia's expression has turned to ice as she glares at the intruder, while Albin looks on. In an instant, a palpable force erupts from Leticia, sending the pigtails girl stumbling backward with a yelp. The students watching from the doorway gasp in shock at the sudden display of power. Her gaze remains fixed on her rival. She coolly remarks that the girl has already let her guard down, dismissing her as a mere kitten who doesn't even know the first thing about tempting a man. She stares down the stunned girl, her voice low and menacing. She asks what the girl sees in her eyes, wondering aloud if she still appears to be some naive, innocent maiden who knows nothing of the world. Her words hang in the air as she leans closer, whispering that she was the one who was beaten to the punch this time, and that the other girl was impressive to have made it this far. Nearby, Albin watches the tense exchange, utterly bewildered by the situation unfolding before him. He turns to Leo, but is quickly shut down. Leo, addressing him formally as Baron Audrin, advises him not to ask, dismissing the matter as a hassle. The two young women continue their silent, intense standoff. Leo then changes the subject, reminding Albin that he is a knight and should be called upon if any trouble arises. Albin, looking away, asks if Leo truly has no intention of becoming the Raja. Leo confirms this, stating he isn't suited for the role. His expression turns serious as he declares his true desire, to become stronger and, one day, to surpass Albin himself. The declaration catches Albin off guard, a strange feeling stirring within him. He realizes with a sudden, chilling clarity that it feels as though the entire world is conspiring to have Leonil defeat him. Unaware of this internal revelation, Leo continues, asking if Albin would be willing to train with him sometime, so he can prove his worth. Albin remains silent, seemingly questioning the sudden change in their dynamic. After a moment's thought, Albin dismisses it as mere observation, but the response is enough for Leo. The knight's face lights up with pure joy, and he thanks Albin profusely, declaring him his true, ideal Raja. The sheer brightness of his admiration makes Albin wince. Their moment is interrupted by the arrival of Ivan Scottish. Leo immediately questions if he is there to protest the results of their duel. Ignoring him, Ivan turns to address the entire room, his hand raised to command their attention. "Listen, everyone," he begins. He stands before them all, his hands placed firmly on a lectern. He announces that he has a proposal concerning the election of the Raja. A confident, calculating smile spreads across his face as he prepares to unveil his plan. At the entrance to the Akatsuki dungeon, a challenge with a recommended level of 20 to 22, Ivan Scottish addresses a group of students. He explains that to prove oneself worthy of the title king, one requires strength, intelligence, and courage. As evidence of these qualities, whoever successfully retrieves a herbal potion from the dungeon's deepest reaches will be acknowledged as the most courageous victor. He then turns to Shanoa Grain and her companion, asking if they are certain they do not wish to participate. As Shanoa quietly affirms their decision, he takes her gloved hand in his. As the other students look on, Estelle Applebury confidently predicts that Albin will be the first to conquer the dungeon. With a loud thud, the gates swing open, and the F-class battle for the herbal potion begins as the students charge inside. Just inside, a hulking, horned monster lets out a ferocious roar. Facing it, Matthias Wolf laughs, boasting that this is his time to shine. His companion, Roan Stelasian, shouts at him not to get cocky against a simple goblin. Observing their posturing, Estelle Applebury closes her eyes with a slight smile, remarking that they are merely in the way. She explodes into motion, leaping high and bringing her heel down in a devastating kick that smashes directly into the monster's skull. The impact cracks bone as Matthias and Roan watch, utterly stunned by her sudden, overwhelming power. The creature's head bursts apart, Estelle lands gracefully, commanding the remains to scatter. She remarks that it was a good warm-up, leaving Matthias to wonder aloud at the incredible strength she possesses. Amidst the aftermath, Albin Audrin sprints past the group, heading deeper into the dungeon. Estelle calls out a quick thanks for the cleanup, but he merely glances back, acknowledging her impressive display of power before continuing his advance. He runs past Ivan Scottish, who watches him with a smirk. Ivan muses internally that while he cannot match Albin's raw movement, he would not lose if he were to use speed-enhancing magic. His expression grows more serious as he continues his thought, questioning if Baron Audrin truly has no intention of backing down from the competition for the king's throne. He speaks to Albin with a hint of sarcasm, apologizing for the delay and addressing him as my king. He observes that it seems some people are displeased with the two of them holding power. His cynical thought is interrupted by the cheerful arrival of Leonil Hylant, who announces himself as the knight, and a girl with pigtails who eagerly declares she is joining them. Ivan's expression darkens at the intrusion. The girl enthusiastically tells her king that it is their turn and they should proceed together into the deepest part of the dungeon. Albin mutters that she's being too loud as the four of them, he, Ivan, Leonil, and the girl, run forward. Deeper inside the cavern, a colossal, rounded shape looms in the darkness, blocking their path. Upon reaching the final chamber, Albin stops, noting that while they are in the deepest part, the herbal potion is nowhere to be seen. Ivan questions the presence of teleportation magic in such a place, while the girl with pigtails suggests it might be a sign that the potion is about to appear. Suddenly, a brilliant light flashes from above. Albin shouts for everyone to get back, shoving Ivan out of the way just as a powerful blast strikes the ground where they had been standing. The impact throws dust and debris into the air. Leonil quickly checks on his companion, asking if she is all right, as Ivan stares ahead in stunned silence. As the dust settles, a hulking monster is revealed, clutching a large, limp body in its hand. Ivan recognizes the creature with a gasp, a cyclops. His companion cries out in disbelief, wondering why such a rare monster would be in this place. The creature's single, massive eye glares down at them menacingly. A cold sweat breaks out on Ivan's face. He exclaims that this development contradicts all the information they were given, his panicked gaze falling upon Albin, who is still on the ground nearby. He slammed his fist against the stone wall, his face a mask of terror and disbelief. A massive chunk of rock, hurled by the Cyclops, crashed nearby, sending dust and debris flying. As his companion's terror peaked, Albin's demeanor shifted to one of cold fury. He watched as the Cyclops brought its club down upon Ivan, the impact shattering the ground. With a defiant cry, Albin then intercepted a smaller horned beast, his blade clashing against its hide. He sneered, dismissing the creature as a mere lump of flesh that shouldn't get cocky. He then turned to the others, his expression now a confident smirk. He ordered the young woman to take care of Ivan, then looked directly at Leo, telling him to come along. It was time, he declared, to teach their foe a lesson. Leo could only stare, taken aback by the sudden authority in Albin's voice. The young woman quickly agreed, her voice filled with resolve. Now standing shoulder to shoulder with Leo, both their blades ready, Albin faced the colossal Cyclops. He turned his head slightly toward his companion, a strange and fervent light in his eyes as he addressed him. As you wish, oh my king. Before the towering doors of the dungeon, Shanoa wonders aloud if their companions have successfully found the herbal potion. Leticia gazes towards the entrance, remarking that considering Albin's speed, he should have already reached the deepest section. Shanoa asks if she is worried, but Leticia clarifies that it's not concern, but rather a lack of understanding since she has never entered a dungeon before. She calmly adds that Albin is with them, implying there is no need for worry. She continues, revealing her actual fear, that Albin might simply slaughter every monster inside. A small, boastful vision of him appears, declaring he will conquer the entire dungeon, which leaves Shanoa speechless with surprise. With a confident smile, Leticia reassures Shanoa that she will surely get to meet the monsters. She then states her complete faith in Albin. Inspired by this conviction, Shanoa clenches her fists, hoping that one day, she too can become someone so thoroughly trusted. Their conversation is violently interrupted. A hulking, horned monster looms behind them, raising a massive club to strike. Leticia cries out Shanoa's name in alarm as the attack descends. The monster's blow is intercepted by a blast of energy. Albin, Leo, and Ivan leap into the fray, launching a coordinated assault against the powerful beast. After landing, Leo remarks that the creature is tough and its beam attack is dangerous. Albin agrees, adding that there is a fortunate delay before it can fire again, giving them an opening. Their battle is complicated by the arrival of an even larger foe, a massive Cyclops. Seeing the new threat, Albin shouts for them to finish it now, and Leo yells his affirmation. The Cyclops' single eye begins to glow intensely, gathering a formidable sphere of energy as it prepares to unleash a devastating blast. As the monster charges its attack, Albin smirks, calling down to his companion. He asks Leo if he's sure he wants to focus only on him. From below, Leo, sword at the ready, shouts back that he won't let him, signaling the start of their pincer attack. The Cyclops lets out a final, guttural roar as Albin's blade pierces its single eye. Leaping back from the spray of black blood, he calls down to his companion, commending Leo on a job well done. He follows up immediately, promising praise as he unleashes a powerful sword art, shouting its name, Aerial Blade. A brilliant arc of energy surges from his weapon. The attack connects with devastating force, slicing clean through the monster's thick neck. The Cyclops' massive body slumps forward, decapitated, as Albin and Leo watch their victory unfold. With the threat eliminated, Leo turns to Albin with arms outstretched, eagerly anticipating lavish praise, perhaps to be called a great knight, or even a king. Albin, however, meets his enthusiasm with a flat expression, clarifying that he hadn't intended to go quite that far with his compliments. Their moment is broken by Estelle Applebury's panicked voice. She gestures towards the fallen monster, demanding to know what happened and pointing out that Ivan had been standing right there. She then realizes with horror that the creature was a Cyclops. She looks past them to the rest of the students, seeing Ivan sitting dazed on the ground. Estelle expresses her utter disbelief, questioning how it was possible for just the two of them to have defeated such a creature. Albin ignores her astonishment, his gaze fixed on Ivan. He calls out to him, his tone hardening as he states that Ivan must know something about the situation and demands that he confess immediately. His threat is punctuated by the sharp, sudden caw of a crow. Albin's head whips toward the sound, his warning to Ivan about what would happen to his neck left hanging in the air. The source of the sound is a masked woman, Carla Rexon, who has appeared without a sound, a crow perched on her arm. Albin stares in shock, wondering aloud how a crow got in here and since when she had been present. Carla greets him casually, welcoming back Darkness Assassamaru. She calmly explains to the bewildered group that she had been with them the entire time, ever since Albin entered the room. She reveals she had been disguised as a bat. She held a small, bat-like creature in her hand, addressing it directly by name, Albin Quinn. The creature flapped its wings, startled by the recognition. At that very moment, elsewhere on the grounds, Leo and his fellow students received grim news. A messenger delivered the shocking report. Lady Leticia and Lady Shanoa had just been kidnapped. The report came amidst a scene of chaos, with figures scattered across the grounds near the site of a recent explosion. Watching the turmoil, Leo's thoughts turned to Albin's family, questioning the whereabouts of Baron Audrey. The weight of the news crashed down upon Albin. Now back in his human form, he stood frozen, his eyes wide with horror as he stared at a familiar ribbon lying discarded on the ground, Shanoa's. As he processed the loss, a lone figure ascended a nearby staircase, leaving the scene behind.